Okay, so good morning, everyone. I'm going to just give you a quick introduction and overview of student finance, just with some of the latest updates and the main bits of information that you need to know about. So in terms of financial support and how it works, so there are two streams of money that you can apply for, and the first one being the repayable, so what accrues the student debt at the end of your study. So that consists of your tuition fee and any maintenance loan that you apply for. But there is also kind of like the non-repayable amounts that you could be eligible for as well. But this will take a little bit more research for you to figure that out, and that will be things like bursaries, scholarships, and grants, which I will touch on briefly, giving you some good websites that you can check that out on. But with regards to the tuition fees, you don't have to pay anything upfront. You would apply for that through Student Finance England, and you can apply for the equivalent of up to the kind of like your fee. So the maximum tuition fee for the last academic year was sat at £9,535. The maximum tuition fee is going to be going up from the 1st of August this year, and that is to £9,790. And it will be going up again next year as well. So 1st of August 2027, and that will be to the maximum tuition fee of £10,050. But you will be entitled to that. So the loan is available to everyone and doesn't depend on your household income, and it gets paid directly to a university or college. The maintenance loan, however, is worked out slightly differently. So the maintenance loan is available to all full-time UK students, but the total amount is actually based on your household income. So everyone is entitled to at least 44% of the loan, so slightly more if you're living away from home, but the remaining amount is what is income assessed on that household income, and it gets paid in 3 instalments. So provided you get all of your student finance applications in on time, that first instalment will be paid when you start at university or college. The second instalment gets paid after Christmas, at the start of the second term, and then your third payment gets paid at the beginning of the summer term. So it is designed just to support you whilst you're in those periods of study. In terms of what that looks like, so obviously a lot of people don't realise you can claim maintenance loan even if you are living at home. So you are guaranteed to get at least £4,013 for that, and then up to the maximum is what is income assessed. So the maximum currently sits at 9,118. Obviously, you will be entitled to more money if you are planning on moving away from home. And then there are a couple of different criteria that will affect that as well. So obviously, if you're moving away from home but living outside London, that will be one amount. If you're moving away from home, but you are going to be studying in London, then obviously there's a slightly kind of like bigger increase in what you're entitled to. So if you're away from home outside London, your non-income assessed amount is currently sat at £5,048, and you can get up to just over £10,830. Away from home, but in London, your minimum amount is 7,039, and your maximum goes up to 14,135. There are always small incremental increases on these amounts every January, and those get confirmed through Student Finance England. How the income assessment works is if you put your application in, if your circumstances do change at any point during the academic year, you can also ask for an in-year reassessment just to ensure that you kind of like get the correct amount. Okay. So what might you be entitled to? I would definitely encourage you to look at that kind of like at kind of like the earliest point, because obviously as we've just kind of like gone through, there are quite significant differences between the minimum that you could get and the maximum that you could get. You can actually find out beforehand, as long as you put in as much accurate information as possible. If you use the student finance calculator, so if you just kind of like go onto the internet, type in student finance calculator, as long as you use use the one that's provided by the gov.uk, put in as much information as you can, you get a pretty good estimate of what you're likely to be entitled to. This gives you a really good opportunity to be able to figure out actually what reasonable costs that's likely to cover, and where, if any, there is going to be any shortfall, where actually it gives you an opportunity to kind of maybe put some money aside just to make sure that this ends up being the most amazing experience. So at that point, doing that student finance calculator does not kind of commit you to any student loans. All it does is it just gives you an idea of what that realistically might look like for you. As I said earlier, there are other kind of like sources of money that aren't repayable that it's definitely worth investing a little bit of time in just to explore your eligibility for those. So that will be things like scholarships, grants, and bursaries. One of the most supportive websites to support this, and it is one that I do know that the Student Loans Company also recommend, and that's called the Scholarship Hub. What you can do is you do get free access to it, but you do need to register. So the application is not dissimilar to what you would have done setting up your UCAS hub. So it's asking you a little bit of information around the type of study you're doing, what you're looking to study, but also an opportunity to put in a little bit more personal information around your own circumstances. So it just makes kind of like looking on the database that much more straightforward. It's a charitable organisation that tries to keep as up to date as possible for all of the scholarships, grants and bursaries that are currently available across the UK. Now, obviously, you can look at individual institutions' websites as well. But what this website will do is it will also search for those things that maybe are attached to personal circumstances or kind of like individual subject areas, as opposed to just being those that are being offered by that particular institution. So it's definitely worth exploring that, because there's lots of different reasons why you could be eligible for additional funding. And obviously, if you don't have to pay it back, that's a real bonus. And that's the Scholarship Hub. So in terms of repayment, this doesn't begin until you're earning over at least £25,000. At that point, any money that you earn over £25,000, you then repay 9% of anything earned over this threshold. So for instance, if you're earning £28,000, you're only paying kind of like 9% on what you're earning over that £25 threshold, so not on the entire amount. So to put some context on that, that means if you were earning that £28,000, your repayments per month on the current payment plan would be £22.50 per month. It's really, really important when you're exploring student finance that you understand that repayments will always be based on what you're earning and not what you owe. So your repayments aren't based on the size of your debt, but actually what you're earning at different stages. So that does mean that obviously as you earn more, you do pay more, but it will track your earnings. So you earn less, those payments drop. And if at any point you drop below the threshold, the payments will stop as well. You can repay early if you want to, but you're not obliged to. That is entirely up to you. You must still repay if you move abroad. It is really important that once you have that student finance account set up, that you keep all of your circumstances up to date. So if anything should change, anything from name to address to circumstances of you, say, moving somewhere different, it is important that you keep that up to date so that it doesn't kind of like affect your repayments detrimentally. Debt is written off after 40 years from the April after you finish your course. So that's also worth bearing in mind. So the repayment period has to hit those two benchmarks. So you have to be earning over £25,000 before you repay, but you also have to have entered into the repayment period, which starts the April after you finish your course. So those two different benchmarks need to be hit. As I said earlier, as you earn more, you kind of like pay more. How it essentially works is if you start with a new employer, there's a little box, really, that's all you need to tick just to say that you have a student loan, and then it is organised through your payroll department and HMRC, who will work that out, and it is tracked on a monthly basis. So if your wages aren't necessarily the same every month, they will ascertain each month whether you are likely to be over or under that threshold before they calculate it. If you are planning on going into any type of self-employment, you have two ways of kind of like setting this up. You can either agree agree with the student loans company that you'll enter into a very similar payment plan to this, where you're paying monthly amounts, or you can get it calculated at the point in which you do your self-assessment tax return, and can pay it the same as your tax and national insurance. So in terms of repayments, in theory, should be relatively straightforward, providing you keep all of your information up to date. And in terms of kind of like the headline information around student finance, I think that obviously that's all the most important information. So with regards of where I can finish, it's just about actually what could you be doing next, could you be doing now. So things to do, so things that you could be doing right now. So use the student finance calculator to check your entitlement, plan your budget. So although you may feel that you're really good at budgeting and managing your money now, look at actually how potentially your circumstances may change. Does that need budget adjustments to kind of like reflect maybe a changes in income with regards to the maintenance loan? But realistically, what does that look like for you? Sign up for the Student Finance campaign. So if you go on to either the Student Finance England website or the Student Loans Company website, you can actually sign up to their annual campaigns. So they will send you newsletters with updated information. They will keep you informed of any kind of like deadlines and dates you need to be mindful of, and just some really useful tips as well. So they will also link in to kind of like giving you different advice on things that you can explore. If you're living at home, make sure you're talking to your parents about their financial support, because again, what we generally find is sometimes all the focus goes on where you study, what you want to study, and then the finance part maybe comes after that. But it is really important, actually, if you're planning on moving away as part of your course, that you look at actually where that financial support will come from for any shortfalls. So living at home, make sure you're talking to parents. We are starting to see more students looking to kind of like gain additional income whilst they're in study. So again, some of the things that you could be doing next is exploring actually part-time work. So if you're already working, will that be able to continue as part of your study? Or if you're moving away, what do the kind of like the job opportunities look like locally in terms of part-time opportunities? Does the university or college support you with that? Make sure you're joining loyalty and student schemes. So looking at things that are specifically targeted at saving students money, that's never a bad thing. There's an amazing website called Save the Student, and that can kind of like give you lots and lots of tips and advice around this. So again, look at actually where you could be saving money now in preparation for returning to your studies. Start saving whatever you can now, because obviously as they say every little helps, and it is really important to make sure that you're setting aside kind of like money to kind of obviously make this the most amazing experience you can. And then last but not least, make sure you're researching, exploring your eligibility to those scholarships, grants and bursaries, because anything that you don't have to pay back is going to be a massive bonus. And although obviously it takes a little bit of effort to explore that, it's definitely effort that's worth making, because it can really pay off if you don't end up having to pay some of this money back. Obviously, if you kind of like look into this and want to explore this in more detail, as I said earlier, maybe sign up and join the student loans or the student finance campaign, just so you can keep up to date with all the latest information. And they will also be kind of like regularly running kind of like frequently asked questions. So as the queries start coming in, they will kind of like publish the most common responses that can be really, really helpful with helping you to explore what student finance might look like for you. Thank you very much.